I have no concern with your stream. I believe it's very strong and powerful. We're just live here in Los Angeles, just discussing the strength of Kenny's stream.
I'm Kenny Hathaway. My stream is strong. My name's Kenny Hathaway. Why are you talking to yourself, Kenny Hathaway?
Good morning. My name is Mark Raymundi here at the UFC 232 official weigh-ins for MMAfighting.com. We're at the Los Angeles Airport Marriott. Did not expect to be here this week. The UFC 232 was supposed to be in Las Vegas at T-Mobile Arena. Instead, it'll be in Inglewood, California at the Forum. The Nevada Athletic Commission would not license Jon Jones to compete this weekend due to an adverse finding in his drug test results. And the UFC moved the card from Las Vegas to here, the Los Angeles area, because the Nevada Commission would not allow Jon Jones to fight. The California Commission will allow him to fight, despite the adverse finding, because they believe it was the same long-term metabolite that was found in Jon Jones' system over a year ago, 17 months ago to be exact, in relation to UFC 214 in July 2017. California Commission, USADA, both feel that it's the same long-term metabolite, that Jon Jones has not ingested anything new since then, and he's already been punished for this particular infraction. And here we are in Los Angeles, not Las Vegas, preparing for the UFC 232 weigh-ins. Jones will fight Alexander Gustafsson for the UFC light heavyweight title in the main event of the card. In the co-main event, arguably the greatest women's fight in mixed martial arts history, Chris Cyborg versus Amanda Nunez for the UFC women's featherweight title. It's champion versus champion, Cyborg, the featherweight champion, against Nunez, the bantamweight champion. It's a great card, somewhat mired by the weirdness going on with Jones and the upheaval of the week, flying the fighters on Thursday by private jet from Las Vegas to here in Los Angeles. But we're here now. Fights are tomorrow night, and weigh-ins will begin in about 2 minutes. And oh, by the way, this morning, 3 hours long. The California Commission is giving fighters an extra hour to weigh in due to all the nuttiness of this week and having to travel yesterday. So we will be here for the next 3 hours, or however long it takes to get through these weigh-ins at MMAfighting.com. Thank you for joining us. Should be seeing the first fighter come out pretty shortly. Commission officials taking their place on the stage, getting ready for weigh-ins to begin. Andy Foster on stage with his lead inspector, Mark Relea.
Första frågan som vi började med, den var grym, så den ville man ju ha verkligen svar på.
And here comes Jeff Nowitzki himself. The man mentioned quite a bit yesterday at the UFC 232 pre-fight press conference.
helt omöjligt att svara. Som att de inte fattar att den här frågan skulle komma. Det är ju det enda som...
Varför sitter du här för?
Alltså de ska ju ha det här svaret Jeff Nowitzki med sig.
Absolut. Ja. Om de inte kan hitta. Och inte hans då borde man ändå ha bara att det svarar
Ja, jag borde fortsätta trycka på varför Jonas inte har fått ett avstängning med 2 andra fighters som skulle göra det läge. Ja, det är så.
Alltså det är inte så enkelt som att Chiesa där med Frank Mir och så, där är det ju att Jones fick ju straff första gången.
Precis.
Sen har inte det var fan intressant.
Jag ska bara lyssna på det.
Ja. Det är jävligt mycket så här.
Men det är det man gillar.
Hearing that the first person on the stage to weigh in this morning will be none other than Jon Jones. And here he comes, Jon Jones, trying to regain the UFC light heavyweight title on Saturday night, phone in hand, looks ready to go. Inspector's telling Jon Jones to put his phone down. He gives it to his manager, Abe Kawa.
$204.
204 for Jon Jones. 204. Makes weight easily.
I've been working on my posing.
Jon Jones leaves his flip-flops on stage.
204, right?
Amanda Nunez!
And here comes Amanda Nunez, who of course is challenging for the women's featherweight title tomorrow night against Chris Cyborg in our co-main event. Nunez is the UFC women's bantamweight champion.
145.
145 on the nose for Amanda Nunez. First fight at 145 pounds for Nunez. In the UFC. But in some ways, a more natural weight class for her. Looks very good on the scale.
Andre Ewell!
And here comes Andre Ewell. You have to have someone named Ewell on a card during the holidays, don't you? Andre Ewell against Nathaniel Wood on the Fight Pass prelims tomorrow night.
135.5.
135.5 for Andre Ewell. So 3 fighters in, and we already have 2 out of our 4 headliners. And here comes Ilir Latifi, the stout light heavyweight who fights Meighan Anderson on the pay-per-view main card at UFC 232. 205.5 for Ilir Latifi. Big fight at 205 pounds for Mr. Latifi against Corey Anderson. Latifi's teammate, of course, Alexander Gustafsson, will fight John Jones in the main event.
Corey Anderson.
Big Swedish contingent in Los Angeles this week, including Swedish media. And here comes Latifi's opponent, Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson pretty vocal over the last few days about the fight changing cities.
$204.5.
204.5, the city change did not affect Corey Anderson's weight cut. 204.5 pounds for Corey Anderson. Here comes CR Bahadurzada, who fights Curtis Milner on our second fight of the night tomorrow night on UFC Fight Pass. Afghanistan's own CR Bahadurzada, also a Jackson Wink MMA product. Quite a long time.
171.
171 for Bahadurzada. That should be a very, very good fight. Bahadurzada versus Curtis Milner, two action fighters tomorrow night. Nathaniel Wood is next up on stage. He fights the aforementioned Andre Ewell. Wood was supposed to fight Tom Duquesnoy in this fight, but Duquesnoy pulled out due to injury. Would have been an excellent European prospect fight.
135.5.
Wood is in at 135.5, and this will still be a good one. Wood, again, another a top European prospect, taking on Ewell, who has a win under his belt against Henan Barao. Should be a good bantamweight scrap tomorrow night. And look who's here, Alexander Gustafson, the challenger. Actually, not the challenger, because it'll be a vacant belt as soon as the bell rings. Daniel Cormier will relinquish it. So technically, they're both challengers. But either way, he fights John Jones tomorrow night.
204.5.
204.5 for Alexander Gustafson. Our main event is official. Jones versus Gustafson 2. The rematch from one of the greatest title fights in UFC history from back in 2013, UFC 165. The toughest fight of John Jones' career, most likely. Here comes Curtis Milner now. We just saw his opponent tomorrow night, CR Bahadurzada, weigh in. And here's Milner. Second fight of the night, UFC Fight Pass.
$170.
170 on the nose for Curtis Milner. Curtis Miller came to the optional media availability yesterday, and he was actually pretty excited that this card is taking place in Los Angeles. He lives just a few miles south in Orange County. Didn't mind at all. He didn't even go to Las Vegas. He just came right here to Los Angeles. Here comes Alexander Volkanovski, and I'm very excited for this fight. Tomorrow night on the pay-per-view main card, Volkanovski versus Chad Mendes, very, very important featherweight fight. Volkanovski, a very exciting up-and-comer from Australia.
145.
And he's in at 145. $145 for Alexander Volkanovski. Said yesterday at the media availability that he feels that Chad Mendes has lost passion, and he feels he can capitalize on that lack of passion from Mendes and make a name in the bantamweight division. Here comes Brian Kelleher. He's in our opener against Montel Jackson at bantamweight.
135.
And he's in at 135. Boom. Brian Boom Kelleher, 135 pounds. Ready to go for his UFC 232 opening fight on Fight Pass against Montel Jackson. Bavon Lewis, next up on stage. Teammate of John Jones, prospect coming out of Jackson Wink MMA. He has Uriah Hall tomorrow night.
186.
186. Makes the weight. He's a guy that the folks down at Jackson Wink MMA in Albuquerque are very high on. But he will not have an easy task tomorrow night against Uriah Hall, a veteran of the UFC's middleweight division. Douglas Silva de Andrade is up next. He has a very intriguing fight tomorrow night against Peter Yan, the Russian prospect, and that is on the FS1 prelims portion of UFC 232. This is a bantamweight fight.
$134.5.
134.5 for Douglas Silva de Andrade. He is official for his fight tomorrow night with Peter Yan. How about this? Here comes BJ Penn, the legend himself, UFC Hall of Famer, one of the best of all time, fighting tomorrow night on the FS1 prelims, comeback fight in some ways against Ryan Hall, the BJJ specialist. This is a lightweight fight.
156.
156 for the prodigy. BJ Penn is in. Pop from the crowd in the back for the Hawaiian legend. Always good to see BJ Penn. The 40-year-old BJ Penn. Here with Andre Pederneiras from Nova União
Chris Cyborg.
in Brazil. Here comes Chris Cyborg, who defends her women's weight title against Amanda Nunez in the co-main event. Cyborg has a well-documented tough weight cut, even to 145 pounds. Asking her to take off her cross necklace.
$144.
144 for Chris Cyborg. So our co-main event is official, Cyborg versus Nunez for the UFC Women's Featherweight title. Here with manager extraordinaire Daniel Rubenstein. Danny, is that the best women's fight in MMA history?
Gotta be, right?
Cyborg Nunez has to be.
Cyborg News has to be.
Peter Yan.
If we ever had champ versus champ women, no. Peter Yan.
Here comes Peter Yan, one of Mr. Rubenstein's fighters on his excellent roster at Ruby Sports Entertainment. Yan has a very big fight tomorrow night against Douglas Silva de Andrade.
Favorite on the card.
Second biggest favorite on the card, according to Danny Rubenstein.
135.5.
135.5 for Yan, who is a very, very good prospect from Russia. Already has 2 wins under his belt in the UFC. It's his first time fighting in the United States. Sixteen fighters have weighed in so far, and here comes Michael Chiesa, who I'm confident in saying will have no problem making welterweight. This is his first fight up at 170 in the UFC. Had a hard time at 155. Talked a lot about that. Says he is done at lightweight, and he is moving on at 170 pounds. He fights the always tough, always game Carlos Condit on the UFC 232 pay-per-view main card tomorrow night.
170.5.
170.5 for Michael Chiesa, who is the healthiest I've seen Chiesa look on the scale quite some time. Looks very happy, in good spirits, almost skipping off the stage. Look how gives a Ric Flair woo at the end. That's a happy man at 170 pounds. Good to see. Uriah Hall up next. He has that middleweight fight against Bavon Lewis on the UFC Fight Pass prelims tomorrow night.
$185.5.
185.5 for Uriah Hall.
That's what I was looking for.
The Queens, New York resident, Uriah Hall. So 18 fighters have weighed in the first 20 minutes of our weigh-ins. Only 2 fighters from the main card are left to weigh in, Chad Mendes and Carlos Condit. Also still waiting on Andre Arlovsky, Walt Harris, Meighan Anderson, Zingano, Ryan Hall, and Montel Jackson. So far, so good. Seems like we have a little bit of a break here. Again, we are at the Los Angeles Airport Marriott at the UFC 232 official weigh-ins. Our main event tomorrow night, Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson, is official. Jon Jones was the first person to weigh in this morning at 204 pounds. Alexander Gustafsson weighed in just a few minutes later at 204.5 pounds. We are good to go for that UFC light heavyweight title fight. The co-main event is also official. Cyborg, who we just saw a few moments ago, weighed in at 144 pounds. And Amanda Nunez, the challenger and also UFC women's bantamweight champion, was the second person to step on the scale this morning, and she weighed 145 pounds. My good friend and colleague and the A-Side co-host, Sean Al-Shadi, is telling me that the people demand Los Angeles Airport fun facts. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but there is nothing fun about the Los Angeles Airport. LAX is not a fun experience by any means. Maybe not as bad as LaGuardia Airport in New York, but LAX is mostly a disaster. Once again, only 2 fighters left to weigh in from the main card, Carlos Condit and Chad Mendes, and overall there are still 8 fighters remaining to weigh in. Had to do some quick math there, and when I say quick, I mean not quick at all. Still a tad surreal that we're in Los Angeles this week. Again, to recap, this fight was originally scheduled for Las Vegas, was moved officially just 5 days ago on Sunday because the Nevada Athletic Commission would not license Jon Jones to compete due to an adverse finding in his drug test results. California said that Jon Jones can compete because they feel like it was a long-term metabolite that he was already punished for last year, and he should not be punished again for it. So he is licensed, and now he is weighed in, ready to go for this fight. The UFC decided to uproot the entire card, unprecedented, at least for something like this, and move it to a new city, new state. Spoke yesterday on the phone, and we'll get back to that little anecdote in a second as Walt Harris takes the stage. Walt Harris will be in the FS1 featured prelim against Andrei Arlovski heavyweight fight. Harris coming off a pretty exciting TKO of Daniel Spitz back in Utica.
Step up forward still when you're ready,
He said, ooh. Careful, baby.
That much over there.
and a half.
258.5 for Walt Harris, the former college basketball player. That's a big boy. That's a big boy. And very thankful that some of the heavyweights are coming down and weighing in now and not waiting until 11:59 a.m. to do so. Remember, these weigh-ins are 3 hours this morning. The California Commission giving fighters an extra hour to weigh in due to the weirdness of the week, having to travel from Las Vegas to Los Angeles yesterday by private flight. It's been a strange week here and in Vegas. Anyway, as I was saying before, Walt Harris really interrupted us. I spoke to the vice president of operations at the Forum yesterday. I have a story up on MMAfighting.com now, and just asking, how does an arena go from not having anything planned, and then 5 days later having to put together a UFC pay-per-view card? And I think it's an interesting read. I thought it was an interesting conversation I had with Rick Merrill, the VP of Ops at the Forum. It was Christmas week this week. It was hard to get people back from holiday. People were out of town with their families. It's been, I'm sure, a very difficult week for those folks at the Forum, trying to scramble and work around the clock, as he said, to get the arena ready for ceremonial weigh-ins in a few hours and, of course, the fights tomorrow afternoon into the evening. Looks like we have a little bit of a break here. "19 fighters have weighed in so far out of 26. 7 remaining.
Yeah, you're right. The fact that they didn't.
Once again, to recap, John Jones has weighed in successfully, 204 pounds. Alexander Gustafsson has weighed in successfully, 204.5 pounds. The UFC light heavyweight title fight tomorrow night is official. So is the UFC women's featherweight title fight. Chris Cyborg weighed in at 144 pounds. Amanda Nunez in at 145 pounds. Nunez, of course, also the UFC women's bantamweight champion. And really a fight that, unfortunately, has flown under the radar. With all of the bizarreness, weirdness of the last few days, the John Jones adverse finding in his drug test, the card being moved from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. But that will be a great fight. Still left to weigh in, Carlos Condit, Chad Mendes, both of them on the main card. Also Andrei Arlovsky, Meighan Anderson, Kat Zingano, Ryan Hall, and Montel Jackson. 7 fighters remaining.
Jonas Ström, eller?
It's always a done from fire. Every time.
It's funny because we're a society of
Nästan som man kan köra till från Göteborg.
About 35 minutes into these weigh-ins. A long way to go. Weigh-ins are ending at 12 p.m. Noon. 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 25 minutes, I guess, remaining. Plenty of time for these final 7 fighters to weigh in.
believe you were at yeah. I just kind of got to where I loved it so much that I just wanted to end. So I'm like, let's just break before it ends for and I just have another so I'm thinking I might start doing this. Maybe do something like that.
Really?
I have a whole thing. It's like all of these
Want to make a jump pick?
You want?
Just 'cause I know you got one probably handy.
Yeah, probably.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh.
Can confirm the report from Lance Pugmire of the LA Times of the fight purses, the guaranteed purses for the top 4 fighters on the UFC 232 card. John Jones will make a guaranteed $500,000. Alexander Gustafsson will make also a guaranteed $500,000. Chris Cyborg as well will make a guaranteed $500,000. and Amanda Nunez will make a guaranteed $350,000. Again, that was reported by Lance Pugmire of the LA Times a few minutes ago. Fairly certain that Jones and possibly Cyborg and maybe even Alexander Gustafsson and Nunez get pay-per-view points, so they'll be making more than that guaranteed sum, but that is their base pay. Once again, we're here at the UFC 232 official weigh-ins. My name is Mark Raymundi. Our main event is official, John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson. Both have weighed in already this morning. Jones at 204, Gustafsson at 204.5 for the 205-pound title fight. Also official is our co-main event, Chris Cyborg versus Amanda Nunez for the UFC Women's Featherweight title. Cyborg weighed in at 144, Nunez at 145. Nunez, of course, is moving up. She is the UFC Women's Bantamweight champion. 7 fighters remaining to weigh in this morning. We're about 50 minutes in to the official weigh-ins. A long time to go, considering that this is a 3-hour weigh-in window due to the craziness of the week, the fight card getting uprooted from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, the fighters flying in via private jet yesterday from Vegas to here in LA. So they get a little extra time to make the wait. We are still waiting on Carlos Condit and Chad Mendes from the main card, Andrei Arlovsky, Meighan Anderson, Kat Zingano, Ryan Hall, and Montel Jackson from the preliminary card. Speaking of that Chris Cyborg Amanda Nunez fight, which, I mean, very well could be the most important women's fight in UFC history, best women's fight in UFC history, champion versus champion, 2 of the greatest ever in their respective weight classes. My colleague, the great Guilherme Cruz, wrote a piece that ran this morning on MMAfighting.com. He spoke to 100.
Danny's here.
Seems to be a commotion on the right side of the room here. I'm not sure what just happened. Anyway, Guilherme Cruz spoke to 100 fighters and coaches about their thoughts on the Cyborg versus Nunez fight. That is something very, very well worth a read this morning or anytime really before the fight tomorrow night. 100, that's a lot. Gotta love the thoroughness of our own Guilherme Cruz. Got a good question from Romel on Twitter just now. He's asking, weren't people asking if Jon Jones would step up and fight on a card right after his suspension sometime in September? If I remember correctly, he said he wasn't ready. Do you think it was because he was failing his PED tests at the time? That's a very good question. And Romel's referring to UFC 230, that card in New York in November. Jon Jones was rumored for that card at one point, and he said he wasn't ready. But now you have to wonder, since the adverse findings in his drug test results started back in August and then again in September, is that the real reason why Jones was not able to fight at UFC 230? Of course, USADA has said they investigated the findings over the last few months. California Commission has done their own fact-finding in the case, and they've both determined that this is the same long-term metabolite, the M3 metabolite of oral turinabol, the same one that Jon Jones tested positive for back in July 2017. They feel it's the same one. He was already punished for it, suspended 15 months in his USADA case, and should not be punished again. So here we are. Jon Jones is being allowed to fight despite that steroid metabolite being found in his system in multiple drug tests between August and now. We have some movement again on stage. It's been quite a while since we saw someone weigh in. But it looks like we are readying for another UFC 232 fighter to hit the scale. Carlos Condit is up next. And here he comes, the natural-born killer. NBK himself. Former interim champion in the welterweight division. Fan favorite. Who has lost 4 in a row. Trying to snap this skid against Michael Chiesa on the main card tomorrow night. Some technical difficulties with the scale, apparently. Hashtag beam scale. What's happening here?
171.
171 for Albuquerque's own Carlos Condit.
Straight ahead, this camera 5.
Jackson Link MMA product.
171.
And we are down to 6 fighters remaining to weigh in. At about an hour into our UFC 232 official weigh-ins. Carlos Condit up there with Brandon Six Gun Gibson, Jackson Wink MMA striking coach extraordinaire. Still waiting on Chad Mendes, Andre Arlovsky, Meighan Anderson. Kat Zingano, Ryan Hall, and Montel Jackson. Everyone else has weighed in and weighed in successfully. We've also got the ceremonial weigh-ins later on at the Forum, just a few miles from here in Inglewood. Of course, MMAfighting.com will be providing full coverage of that. As always, that begins at 4 p.m. local time, Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Just to recap, if you're just tuning in, the UFC 232 main event is official. John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson have both weighed in successfully for their UFC light heavyweight title fight tomorrow night. The co-main event, also official. Chris Cyborg versus Amanda Nunez for the UFC women's featherweight title. Nunez moving up from bantamweight, where she is the champion, to fight Cyborg for Cyborg's title. Jones, the former champion, trying to regain the belt that he never lost inside the octagon against Alexander Gustafsson. Right now, as we speak, at 10:03 a.m. California time, Daniel Cormier is still the UFC light heavyweight champion. But as soon as the bell rings tomorrow night, Cormier will relinquish that belt, and the winner of the Jones-Gustafsson fight will become the champion at 205 pounds in the UFC. What's next for Cormier? It's a good question. Cormier and Jones were going at it on Twitter very hard this week in light of the news of the adverse finding in Jones' drug test results. Cormier, in many ways, understandably not happy about how things are shaking out, calling the UFC exec Jeff Nowitzki, California Commission Executive Officer Andy Foster, jokes seems like signs could be pointing toward Jones-Cormier 3 in the future, but some things have to happen before that goes down. First and foremost, John Jones winning tomorrow night against Alexander Gustafsson and reclaiming that light heavyweight title. Jones said last week that it would take a pretty penny to get him to move to heavyweight to challenge for Daniel Cormier's heavyweight title. That seems like a fight that many fans would like to see, however. Cormier versus Jones at heavyweight. Already seen it twice light heavyweight. Why not give it a go at heavyweight? Which, by the way, also seems like Daniel Cormier's natural weight class. Of course, Cormier is also waiting on Brock Lesnar. That's a fight that he has wanted and he's hoping to get for the heavyweight title at some point early next year. And as it stands right now, Cormier has vowed to retire in March of next year when he turns 40 years old. So who will he fight next? Will it be Jones? Will it be Lesnar? Will it be someone else? Will it be Stipe Miocic, who Cormier beat for the heavyweight title back in July? Lots of questions, and we'll start getting the beginnings of the answers to those questions tomorrow night at the conclusion of this fight between Jones and Gustafsson.
6?
Já estamos ao vivo. Então você fala com eles para tirar a carteira nos aviões? Qual que é o ramal?
É aquele web project. É o cara que respondeu o e-mail. Como é que eles conseguiram botar? Acho que era BT, né? Era BT fechado, né? No ponto que eles fizeram uma colher no aqui da Fortaleza era BT fechado. Or they were. Or? Yes. Olá, amigos. Estamos ao vivo aqui dessa parte final deve ser Los Angeles. Com a Adriana Albuquerque.
Boa tarde, né, para os nossos amigos do Brasil. Estamos acompanhando essa pesagem nesse dia. Tem muita coisa para falar, com certeza.
Falar sobre a pesagem mesmo, né? Bom, teve toda essa confusão sobre a transferência de Las Vegas para Los Angeles. Eles estavam de noite, fez o evento para cá, mas por conta disso, a pesagem excepcionalmente mais de uma hora. Então agora são 10h14 da manhã aqui em Los Angeles, normalmente às 11 horas da manhã essa pesagem terminaria, mas acompanhar o prazo, né, de até meio-dia, poderia passar pela balança, até agora faltam só 6 atletas, as duas principais confirmadas.
Exatamente, faltam apenas 2 atletas, então vamos torcer para não precisar desse tempo todo, né? Não precisar esperar até meio-dia, porque já 18 atletas passaram em 20 minutos já. E agora só faltam 6 atletas para jogar aqui em Paulo. André Oski, Meighan Anderson, Ryan Hall e Michael Jackson. Todo mundo já passou. do MMA, em cada evento a gente aprende uma nova palavra, né, Ana? E agora essa é a palavra da vez. O programa que esse o Jeff Novitz, que é o diretor do programa, né, do UFC, de acordo com alguns cientistas, é menos do que uma molécula,
Na coletiva seria, você pegaria um grãozinho de sal e dividiria em 28 milhões de partículas
exatamente. E aí, né, as pessoas se perguntam, mas não, mas afinal, é óbvio não é. Segundo o pessoal da Comissão Médica da Califórnia, ele já usado, não teria como ele receber nenhum benefício por essa mínima quantidade e não seria algo que ele estaria tomando agora, ainda um efeito daquilo que ele tomou antes. Então, por isso, a Comissão da Califórnia foi, vai se lembrar, foi onde o Jonas foi flagrado no ano passado, foi suspenso, né? E a USADA, que é especializada nisso, decidiram que ele poderia competir, que ele não receberia nenhuma vantagem. Mas por fã, né, para o pessoal, agora é top, né? Por que eles anunciaram se não vale, né, se não é importante? O que importa vai estar o UFC resolvendo transferir a luta para Los Angeles, teria condição de fazer a luta aqui, a comissão queria que passasse por uma audiência liberada.
tempo, né, por causa do processo e tudo mais, mas já conseguiu a discussão aqui.
Estamos aqui.
E conforme a gente noticiou no combate.com, além disso, né, a comissão atlética daqui da Califórnia fez com que o John Jones topasse, mas tem precisando fazer, é também participar do programa da VADA, né, que é voluntária de antidoping dos Estados Unidos. Então ele vai ser praticamente testado todo fim de semana.
Imagina toda hora tendo que tirar sangue, assim, a gente acha que não tá, imagina assim, 2 vezes na semana ter que tirar sangue toda semana, acaba com imunidade, boa sorte para o John Jones aí, mas ele trouxe isso para si mesmo, nos casos dele, e vai ter que passar por isso.
Bom, os dois passaram aqui pela balança hoje, luta confirmada com sucesso. É uma revanche, uma luta que mais trabalho lá dentro do jogo. Ele falou pra gente, falou que na verdade, né, naquela época ele se sentia abençoado por Deus, um dom natural, um lutador que eu gostaria de ter nada, e que o Gustafsson fez desde que era humano. Achei interessante essa declaração do John Johnson, estava preparado, conversei com o Roberto Chiesa, o treinador dele, falou que realmente esse Kenji, mesmo afastado por tanto tempo, o John Johnson estava muito motivado, não vem para deixar um monstro, já que muita gente achou que a luta, ficou na dúvida, né, que realmente levou aquela luta que organizou, tinha vencido mais, foi uma luta. Quando você viu durante a semana, o clima, até o jogo mental do dia, essa luta se desenvolve da mesma forma, esse grupo mais forte ainda do final.
Vocês não poderiam deixar que conta isso daí, né? O John Jones disse que era fácil por Deus, porque natureza também, Flamengo. A luta, eu acho que a gente viu aí aquele clima, né, de rivalidade e tal, para eles ainda se complementaram, encarada, né? Mas acho que o Jonas está sempre brincando um pouco, né, com a cabeça tentando
Se cumprimentaram, mas a gente lembra que a luta vai no cinturão vago, né? Não é mais só para o cinturão, mas enfim, ontem da noite estava com o cinturão vago, o título de meio pesado, não, eu não vou no final, né? O cinturão, porque eu sou uma
exatamente, para mostrar, ó, o cinturão não canta. Acho que aquilo, o Jonas, ele dá uma zoada, o Gustafsson depois dá um abraço para confundir um pouco, né? Eu espero que
Looks like we have a fighter coming up. Commission inspectors getting ready. Cat Zingano, who fights Meighan Anderson on the FS1 prelims tomorrow night. 145-pound fight. Zingano moving up to 145. Former title contender in the UFC at 135 pounds. It's here with her good friend Barb Ponchak, the former Invicta flyweight champion. $144 for Cat Zingano. Big fight for her at 145, making the move up. If she wins, she beats Meighan Anderson. Case could be made that could be next for Chris Cyborg, or, of course, Amanda Nunez, whoever wins in the co-main event tomorrow night. So 5 fighters left now. We're almost halfway through this 3-hour weigh-in window. Almost 90 minutes in. And remaining are Chad Mendes, Andre Arlovsky, Meighan Anderson, Ryan Hall, and Montel Jackson. And it looks like there's someone else here, and it's Andre Arlovsky, the heavyweight veteran, former UFC heavyweight champion. And he's fighting Walt Harris in the FS1 featured preliminary spot tomorrow night. Looks like Arlovsky just wants to weigh in. He's a heavyweight, wants to leave his clothes on, and the California Commission inspectors are saying, no, sorry, Andre. You gotta take that off. You gotta hand the chain to somebody else. Arlovsky is telling the commission that he's not wearing any underwear and doesn't want to take off his pants. I imagine that he was teasing. He actually is wearing underwear. And the Pitbull, Arlovsky.
$245.5.
Weighing in at 245.5. And I see Ryan Hall queued up after Arlovsky. Ryan Hall, of course, fights BJ Penn, the legend, on the FS1 prelims. We haven't seen Ryan Hall since December 2016 when he fought Gray Maynard on the TUF 24 finale. It's been a while for Ryan Hall, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist, multiple-time champion.
Even.
Ryan Hall weighs 154. No problem for Hall. Very fascinating fight tomorrow night against BJ Penn. Ryan Hall 6-1 in MMA, has not lost a fight since 2006. Has 2 wins in the UFC against Artem Lobov and Gray Maynard, but doesn't fight that often. Has a very solid business in Virginia, coaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Would love to see how his jiu-jitsu matches up with BJ Penn's jiu-jitsu.
That's why after I used it, I was like, I'm not going to get it. That would be bad.
Penn has not won a fight since 2010 against Matt Hughes at UFC 123. So just 3 fighters remaining to weigh in. Chad Mendes, Meighan Anderson, and Montel Jackson.
Jag vet det, jag sitter och kollar på det hela tiden.
Still plenty of time to weigh in. We got 3 hours this morning due to the travel changes for the UFC 232 card moving from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. California Commission giving fighters an extra hour to weigh in. So still 90 minutes remaining for Mendes, Anderson, and Jackson to hit the mark. Of course, to recap, our main event fighters are in and official. John Jones at 204, Alexander Gustafsson 204.5. That main event light heavyweight title fight is good to go for tomorrow night at the Forum. And the co-main event is good to go as well. Amanda Nunez at 145, Chris Cyborg at 144. They are fighting for Cyborg's women's featherweight title. Nunez, the bantamweight champion, moving up to Cyborg at 145. Cyborg has not lost a fight in a very, very long time. 2005, the first fight in her career, has not lost since then. Will Nunez be the one to do it? Cyborg has only gone to decision once since 2008. She's finished everyone else. That one decision was against Holly Holm at UFC 219 in December 2017. Speaking of long unbeaten streaks, John Jones has never really been beaten in his MMA career. But he does have a loss by disqualification due to illegal 12-6 elbows against Matt Hamill back in 2009. Other than that, and the no contest against Daniel Cormier from last year due to the positive drug test, John Jones' record is unblemished. Never truly been beaten inside the octagon. And Alexander Gustafsson and Amanda Nunez have big-time opportunities tomorrow night to change the course of history in a sense.
My wife's always like, oh, what's your
Because you said you hate
No,
me.
he never said no, that's because he wouldn't have any chance. But I just felt uncomfortable with the way that she was. Just teenage. And I'm like, to this day, he does not have it. Right, exactly. That's what I told him. I'm like, when you get that fucking money, then you can get into it. You don't have any money right now. Not any of that. I'm clapping and cheering last day.
Looks like commission inspectors are coming out. Got some movement here. Chad Mendes is here. About to weigh in. Mendes, of course, fighting Alexander Vulcan Oski. He is at 146. Big featherweight title fight on the UFC 232 main card. Only 2 fighters left now. Meighan Anderson, Untitled Chapter. I'm Mark Raymundi for MMAfighting.com. We're at the UFC 232 official weigh-ins. Been here for about 90 minutes. We've seen the entire UFC 232 card weigh in, except for those 2 fighters, Meighan Anderson, Montel Jackson. John Jones weighed in successfully. Alexander Gustafsson weighed in successfully. So did Chris Cyborg and Amanda Nunez. The entire main card has now weighed in, and all of them on the mark. No weight misses thus far. Meighan Anderson, the women's featherweight, who's fighting Zingano tomorrow night, has a very difficult weight cut to 145 pounds. She's 6 feet tall, possibly even a natural 155 pounder. And it's a difficult one, getting her down to 145, so it's not entirely surprising she is taking the time given during this weigh-in window.
nosso equipamento deu problema, deu tudo, tá tudo ótimo.
Tem um problema para todo mundo, viu? Mas assim, a gente tem que lidar com os problemas e seguir adiante, né? E o triste é os lutadores realmente, que vários tinham família, indo para Las Vegas, amigos que economizaram muito dinheiro para estar em Las Vegas nesse fim de chave. Não conseguiram cancelar seus voos, não conseguiram cancelar seus quartos, alguns não tiveram seus ingressos e quartos reembolsados. Então, ontem a gente falou com eles, eles estavam todos positivamente positivos, eles dizendo, pelo menos a gente não está lutando, pelo menos a gente ainda vai receber. Alguns deles são da Califórnia, então gostaram da luta ter vindo para cá, fica mais fácil para alguns amigos de fora. Mas ao mesmo tempo, né, é muito difícil e eu imaginava até que o corte de peso ia ser pior para eles, mas pelo visto só sobraram dois que estão com problema.
Na verdade, eles voltaram muito peso lá porque vieram em cima da hora pra cá. Normalmente os lutadores chegam na terça-feira, chegaram na quarta.
A maioria chegou na terça-feira, né? Vieram um pouco fretados pelos aviões para cá. Enfim, uma situação que não é ideal.
Tokyo. Little trip. Wrestling.
Oh, nice.
I do a little bit of work in New Japan on the side.
Oh, cool.
So, a friend of mine is their translator, and he's arranged a couple of gigs for me while I was out there. Trying to make it like in January. My friend just moved out. Another friend of mine, Cozy, she just moved out there. Yeah. She's gonna like start like around for art museum.
Oh, wow.
For people to come and do like residencies and stay there for a couple months and get back. Hopefully sometime next year we'll plan to go out there and just have a look. But I'll provide really like dude, I don't like art collection.
Yeah, like find inspiration. I used to be in an artist group. I was the one who did my artist and like my artist always felt like whenever we did those retreats and stuff, and I was like, take pictures of you guys painting.
Yeah, we mostly do like ceramics. So, like, ceramics.
Ceramics sounds fun.
Plus, there can be like little boats running around.
So it's just one event out there or a couple or?
It's like 3 days sometimes. So 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So I'm not working on the 4th, but I'm working on the 5th.
So Casey just gets to be a fan out there?
Yeah, I earned him some tickets to the event. Yeah, just gonna go out there and spend some money.
At least you're earning a little bit.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna actually flea market this time, and when I go, I'm always like time.
Are you?
Where are you going? I'm going for the one.
Are you staying any extra time to see like the cherry blossoms? Is it at the end of March?
Yeah, March 31st. Yeah, I want to. I want to do a couple days before and a couple days after.
Oh, cherry blossoms.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay, cool. I can know. I'm excited. I've never been. We just started traveling recently. I always disconnect with things like I was just like, I've been to Singapore and Korea.
Singapore's great. Actually, so much stuff is in English too.
Yeah, oh yeah. When I got there, it was like, yeah. So,
Oh, what a good time to go. I haven't been there in the springtime since like college. I went to college.
so should I cover my tattoos? Because I've heard that.
No, because they know you're.
You're not,
Yeah. You're not Japanese. So
Okay,
it's okay.
because I know that like traditionally, I don't want to offend.
I mean, it'll be cold.
Oh, in
Chill,
March?
not cold, but you know,
Okay,
whatever. You might want to have your jacket on.
Yeah, okay.
The only thing you can't do is you want to be able to go to hot springs.
Okay.
You don't have to find one that's tattoo friendly.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because they don't like if there's like a spa in the hotel or like a lock back, they won't let you in. That's the only thing.
All right. Well, let's get
Aí vocês conferiram apesar de que falou por até agora, aqui na presencial,
That was the only thing. Like when I went to took like a business trip out to Kyoto, and I wanted to go to the hot springs, and I had to find a hotel that has either private baths or okay with facilities. So
lamparão,
yeah, guys cutting weight out there.
campeão. Cara,
always so.
triângulo voador. Gostou, né? Estava aqui com Léo Santos.
You know, I mean, yeah, generally, I mean, it's not a point.
That's what I thought. I mean, it's like they, you know.
I know, right?
Yeah. So it's not going to be. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, he's like my god, I'm not sweating. It's like, it's amazing.
Even more excited.
Yeah, and they'll be everywhere.
all day.
No, you know what? There's actually one on the 30th here. It's awesome. It's a bar and there's no ring, and it's just like a crazy, like a bar fight. But it's a suburban fight. They actually put a lot of pushes on it. It's okay. But he also does this kind of ring.
Hanging in there?
Got two more. Best photographer.
All right.
I have the picture that I show everybody that Esther took, and she sent to me, or actually Mark sent it to me, but you know, I've got it. It's the best picture that I've seen. I mean, literally, and I'm not just saying that, I'm talking about in the history of combat sports, I've never seen a picture of this. And I see lots of pictures. Wait till you see it. This is a good picture. That's Wilder Fury.
Yeah, that's a great
Strong. I had seen that. Strong.
I mean, that kind of took it all.
And then he got back.
And then I got the pictures of him when he was down.
If he doesn't get back up, that's like picture of the year. Right? You know what I mean? When he gets back up, it's
And
just like.
I thought that was a good one
that's a good
because Jack's trying to. I mean, in this, and then look, this is how big Fury is. Like there's Jack.
Yeah.
That's one of your shots. Hey.
It's just like Jamie London, like, okay. I really like how Jack was
I'm
like,
fine, little man. Do it.
yeah. Jack was like, no, can you walk to the corner and walk back?
Yeah.
That was very weird. It is. I mean, we've got that picture being done to put up in the commission office because that's a big.
You gotta pay her for that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful picture.
Yeah, it is.
That was a fun fight that night. That was a fun fight.
Pretty nice. Pretty nice.
Man, I was sitting there
Thought it was over, huh?
round 5.
Oh, no, yeah.
I'm looking at the scores. And I just start praying. Please let them see the right fight.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they're coming in. They're going, ooh, you know, and I'm seeing, because I was on Roshin's side, I'm seeing a Wilder fight.
Right.
Because like, and Mauricio Sumar and me are sitting beside. He's seeing a Wilder fight. The chairman's seeing a Wilder fight. And I'm seeing Fury scores come back, except for, you know, because those first 4 rounds were super close.
Yeah.
And you know, people criticize Roshin's score. And I was like, Matthews, 9 and 12 are not disputed.
Mark Ray Mundy for MMAfighting.com at the UFC 232 official weigh-ins. It's about 10:53 a.m. local time. There are 2 fighters remaining to weigh in, and those fighters are Meighan Anderson and Montel Jackson. Everyone else on the card, including the main event, John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson, co-main event, Chris Cyborg versus Amanda Nunez, have weighed in successfully. All of those fights are official and ready to go for tomorrow. Just waiting on those aforementioned 2, Anderson and Jackson. Keep in mind that on a regular weigh-in morning, we would be up against it right now. We would only be 5 minutes away from the conclusion of the 2-hour window. However, because of the travel this week, the card moving from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, the California Commission has granted an extra hour to the fighters on the card. So there's still more than an hour left in this weigh-in window. Thank you for sticking with us here on MMAfighting.com during this lengthy UFC 232 official weigh-in broadcast. I've been talking to myself now for nearly 2 hours. And if I wasn't crazy before, you best bet I've gone off the deep end. Again, John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, the UFC light heavyweight title main event is official. Both men weighed in successfully earlier this morning. The co-main event, UFC women's featherweight title fight between champion Chris Cyborg and bantamweight champion moving up Amanda Nunez. That fight is also official. Both women weighing in successfully.
That's just pro. This will be number 6060. So, yeah, we ran a lot this year. So the answer is, I had enough staff because we run shows all the time. So it's like I had to bring anybody back. Pulling people together on 6 days' notice, though.
So it seems as if Meighan Anderson and Montel Jackson will take advantage of this extra hour, being told by sources that Anderson is doing fine, she's nearly on weight, and will be here shortly.
It comes out like late next year, so probably first quarter of 2019 was
You get to make it up later, though, right? You get a day off.
Oh, yeah, sure. Might be a solo.
I want to retire. Make up all those days.
This means I get an extra day off
By
later.
launch by
After Christmas.
Yeah, by February. At least a teaser. Jonas think it's
Vou lembrar, agora tem essa frase pra gente cobrar dele lá. Saudades felices, mas já fui treinador no
Trying to shoot a preview or something? Still trying to shoot a preview today or something?
Oh.
We'll do it at the venue or something? I mean, what happened? Do you think we could, if the music's playing,
And then you
it's
put in
loud?
your grocery name.
It was like maybe once there's an hour between setup and start. Maybe we could do it then. Yeah, I don't mind standing by back.
I mean, it just depends on who's on the side.
Yeah.
Eight
I guess it
maybe or something.
depends how loud it is.
Something, I don't know what it is. Fell asleep during, like, underneath, through the
Either way.
Do we just do like a solo rundown, or you want to go a shot with Danny?
I mean, I believe him.
Like last week at the Bellator,
Fair, too.
they spilled back about it. They just kind of like pushed it out of the cage, and then it just like, you know, it's like grating.
Yeah.
It just went right all over the tables and all that. I was like, and you heard the production guy go, no, those are all the.
Isn't that beautiful, man?
It's all the electricity.
The wet stuff, the lighting.
So I'm wondering, like, if you sleep under the cage with like people just like throwing like bloody swabs at you.
I remember I was shooting
você que é técnico, né? Ele que é treinador.
Just get it right at me. And
Vai
I'm like,
acontecer
you
amanhã.
can see me right
que o
here. I'm
Gustafsson
like,
faz pra
I'm right here.
Se você
Você
fosse
fosse
treinador,
Huge to
treinador do
spin in.
Gustafsson, o que você diria pra ele se ele fazer amanhã?
Another cup of coffee.
Lembrando da primeira luta, né? O Gustafsson realmente surpreendeu. O Jonas vinha esperando diversos campeões da categoria dos meio pesados. E aí, o Gustafsson conseguiu fazer aquele feito histórico, botou o Jonas para baixo, fez o Jonas sangrar. Nossa, eu nunca tinha visto meu sangue escorrendo pela cara. Deu aquele suíço no John Jones. Mas como você acha que termina? Te dou um dinheiro para você apostar. Estamos na zebra, ele aqui, Adriana, minha opinião.
Não, eu acho que o John Jones vence, né? Como eu falei anteriormente, acredito que o Jones vai vir motivado e de repente até um round, quarto, quinto round. Mas você segura que também o Jones.
Adriano, nosso líder no palpitão de combate muito bom, você vai conferir amanhã, né?
Eu tenho que perguntar para o editor que vai subir se é hoje ou amanhã.
Eu não tenho muito mérito para falar, porque só não quero, mas ok, abafa o caso. Vamos falar então, palpite para também super favorita, Cyborg, 109% de favoritismo contra a Amanda Nunez. Léo Santos, sua opinião sobre a luta, depois a gente vai desvendar tecnicamente os segredos de cada uma das lutadoras.
Fala tecnicamente também, Léo, como que se você fosse o treinador da Nunez, o que você orientaria, como seria a estratégia para vencer essa luta?
I like yesterday when he was like, I'm starting a GoFundMe for Dana's taxes. That was the first time I heard the band go just boo, straight boo him.
Yeah.
E a gente tem na Nova União, sua academia, né, a Kathleen Vieira, que está na boca aí com uma disputa de títulos, acabou, ia lutar, mas acabou se machucando. Como está a Kathleen, a previsão que ela volte? Você acha que ela faz frente à Amanda Nunes? Vamos liberar? Vamos deixar ele continuando aqui?
Olha, ele está saindo bem aqui na frente das câmeras. Então, afinal, a gente ainda tem o quê? Mais quase
Temos
uma
mais
hora
de uma
inteira.
hora, lembrando que... lembrando que apesar de que normalmente vai até 12 horas, mas por conta dessa confusão toda, transferência de cidade, a gente teve essa hora adicional, faltam dois atletas, Meighan Anderson e Montel Jackson. A gente vai rapidinho dar uma paradinha aqui, agradecer ao Léo Santos, obrigada, boa sorte pro DJ. Seja um grande retorno, eu sou muito fã do DJ, Adriana mais ainda do que eu. Vamos ver quem vai ficar mais nervoso entre nós três aqui nesse retorno. Obrigada, Léo. Obrigada, Léo. A gente vai dar uma pausa por aqui, mas rapidinho.
Two left, Meighan and Montel. Oh, the last person that weighed in?
Mendes.
Yeah, that's it. I know, dude, like, I know. It'd be so nice not to have to jump in the car, get over there, go through security. Yeah. Yeah. Just like, can we just sit right here for a couple hours?
Tem dois produtos que causam sucesso com a principal que confirmado até agora.
Maybe the forum wanted it or something, I don't know, but
I'm confused because I thought Ozfest was at the forum. And then, because I looked at the, you know, we read by it all the time.
Yeah.
The giant sign that says December 29th, Marilyn Manson. And I was like, wait, what? And
it's interesting.
but then it's not there anymore now, so it's like,
I don't know what they did. I wonder if like ticket
yeah.
sales sucked or something. Just like,
Magically get canceled.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Also, didn't realize Marilyn Manson was still there.
Yeah, I didn't.
Ele também fez aquele clássico do Edson Barbosa, né? Eu, na área dele, foi Deus que
Mas a pedir para Deus sempre ter que é o novo segredo.
você tem que, enfim, vamos voltar para o assunto que a luta, o Douglas estava bem, o Adriano pesou um pouquinho mais pesado que ele, estava com 65,5, aí ele já disputa o cinturão ainda, mas uma luta muito dura, porque você pega uma promessa russa que as pessoas estão vendo ele, inclusive, ontem pediu luta no João Lineker. Não, enfim, se o Patrick passar pelo Douglas da Silva, de repente, ele pode ser um futuro adversário do Lineker também.
Sim, com certeza. E a gente hoje é dia 27 de dezembro, já começamos aqui com a retrospectiva do ano. 8,
There's somebody. Yeah,
I'm back in obviamente. Mas hoje separei um pouquinho do
He's laying on the ground right now.
Momento número 1. Daniel Chiesa, duas categorias.
Nothing for it.
I'm just looking to see who's there.
É uma luta assim que muita gente
Oh yeah. I'm sick. I don't see anybody. I gotta move. This is exciting. Oh, am I in everybody's film right now?
Two or three people.
Everybody's live streams. Yeah, you're like, what's happening?
Sweet.
All the way down the trash can. Oh,
I like doing video when we do the ceremonials because for ceremonials we just do the face-offs, but for stills we do like all of them. So like there's actually more photos in ceremonial than there are artificial, you know?
Yeah.
I like when I'm video guy and somebody else is shooting stills. I'm like, except for the morning, we take the time to actually put the fighters like in order of the card, so it's like a pain in the ass edit. So like with video, the morning sucks, the afternoon's easy, and then with photos, it's like it's not hard, but it's just like, God damn it, I want to be done.
Farrões do ano também, porque logo depois que ele tirou o Tite, tivemos um momento
Definitely not coming at high and sit down.
encenação toda lá que a gente conhece e que a gente não sabe nem se vai sair do papel, não vai. O Brock Lesnar só poderia ser na Rio de Janeiro no ano que vem, ainda não anunciaram nada. Vamos ver o que dá, né? Agora já se fala aí de um do estado para fazer.
They kept saying ask Jeff Nowitzki, so are we going to get to ask Jeff Nowitzki?
Yeah, that's weird. Like, they had him available. I mean, it's kind of weird. We were talking last night, like, I mean, those press conferences that are open to the public, they're more just a fan of it. It's like, would it have been, you know, even, I mean, would have Dave just been like yelling and booing? It would have been off maybe it might not have been a bad idea to have like Danny was saying, like you have to just say, hey, we're gonna make Nowitzki available for 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
and,
scrum.
and FYI, at the end of 10 minutes, I don't care if he's in the middle of a question, he's walking away. But we'll get you what we need to get you. You know what I mean? Like that probably would have been suitable. But part of me thinks just nobody thought about it. I mean, we all know how much everybody was scrambling this week. You know, we were all scrambling. So I'm sure, just, to be honest, probably just nobody thought about it.
Mark Raymundi for MMAfighting.com. It's 11:11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're at the UFC 232 official weigh-ins at the Los Angeles Airport Marriott. And we're waiting for two more fighters from this UFC 232 card to weigh in. And those fighters are Meighan Anderson and Montel Jackson. Those two fighters have until noon Pacific, which is about 45 minutes from now, give or take, to weigh in. Everyone else on the card, the other 24 fighters, have all weighed in successfully, and that is including the main event, John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson. Jones weighed 204, Gustafsson weighed 204.5. That fight is for the UFC light heavyweight title. Co-main event is also official. Chris Cyborg weighed 144. Nunez weighed 145 pounds. That bout is for Cyborg's women's featherweight title. Nunez, the UFC women's bantamweight champion, moving up in weight and taking on Cyborg, who has not lost since 2005. It's one of the best, if not the best, women's mixed martial arts fights of all time. And the main event is pretty darn good in its own right. Jones and Gustafsson fought once before at UFC 165 in 2013. And it was one of the greatest UFC title fights ever. Fantastic unanimous decision win in Toronto that night for John Jones, who had to battle back from adversity. After these official weigh-ins, we'll be back later on this afternoon for the ceremonial weigh-ins at the Forum in nearby Inglewood, California. That'll be at 4 p.m. local time, these ceremonial weigh-ins. Interestingly enough, Inglewood is in Los Angeles County, and many people who do not live in Southern California kind of just equate Inglewood with LA. Technically, it is its own city. Has a population of 109,673, according to the 2010 U.S. Census. Los Angeles County is a county made up of many individual cities that kind of get conflated with people just saying Los Angeles. For instance, Santa Monica, its own city, Beverly Hills, its own city, own mayor, what have you, and West Hollywood also its own city. But all of them are pretty much used colloquially under the catch-all of LA, Los Angeles. Inglewood is not a very big city, only has a square mileage of just over 9 square miles, 9.09. Not quite as minuscule as a picogram, but small nonetheless. Smallest city in LA County? Vernon. Only 112 people live in Vernon, but it's its own city. Vernon, California. The smallest of any incorporated city in the state, and it's near downtown Los Angeles. Well, it's the nearest to downtown Los Angeles of the other cities. The largest city in LA County is, of course, the city of Los Angeles. Nearly 4 million people live in the city of Los Angeles. Long Beach clocks in at number 2 among the biggest cities population-wise in LA County. Number 3, Glendale, the home of Ronda Rousey's famed Glendale Fighting Club gym. Shout out to Coach Edmund Tarverdian.
A história, né, todos os bastidores da edição do UFC no Brasil, que ele nunca passa. Segue a retrospectiva. Não chegou o momento. Não esqueci.
Também que esse vai ser esse primeiro se vai ser o Felipe precisa fazer isso, e agora virou astro de reality show na TV brasileira, né? Boa sorte aí pra você nessa nova fase da vida dele. Vamos ver se ele vai voltar também, porque ele também é muito jovem. Ele é um cara que poderia voltar. A gente acharia ok, mas ele tem que ficar já é um cara de 41 anos, e o Vitor disse assim que não é como se ele estivesse voltando da aposentadoria, tá com 6 meses parado, né? Então não é tranquilo, não é como aconteceu com o Chiesa agora, que voltou a lutar 8 anos depois.
Vamos falar das meninas então, porque eu quero chegar no nosso prêmio de Lacan, mas para lá, antes de chegar até lá, obrigado por me acompanhando, mande suas perguntas pesadas, sabe que o UFC 232, que a gente responde suas dúvidas. Eu acho que o ano superior, principalmente para as brasileiras, a Jessica Andrade teve vitória, se aproximou cada vez mais do cinturão da categoria e também tivemos a criação de uma nova novas lutadoras do peso pena. O que vocês acharam do feminino? Claro, coroado por essa luta entre as duas melhores lutadoras que puderam ter esse log pro peso pena e a Amanda Nunes.
Olha, foi um ano importante para as meninas que a gente teve, né? A gente teve algumas lutas femininas que foram importantes também. Da vaga de Shevchenko, o Caio, o Leite, na verdade não foi entre brasileiras, mas abriu aí mais uma divisão. A gente pode trazer muitas brasileiras, né? A gente já tem brasileiras que podem estar aí buscando esse cinturão. Acho que a Jéssica tem 20 anos, deve ser a próxima pelo menos a disputar o cinturão contra a Vulcan e Jonas. E para mim, essa luta que encerra 2018, né, que é a Amanda Nunes e a Cyborg, vai entrar para a história, porque é a primeira luta feminina, mas também é a primeira vez que a gente vai conseguir ver um teste de verdade para a Cyborg. Acho que ela nunca enfrentou uma adversária tão condecorada, com tantas qualidades físicas no pé e no chão como a Amanda. Óbvio que a gente tem a Holly Holm, né, que era campeã de boxe, tinha um currículo sensacional, mas ela não tinha, assim, a habilidade no chão, não era tão completa como a Amanda. Então eu acho que a Amanda é, assim, hoje a única lutadora que poderia, na verdade, acabar com esse final da Cyborg, mas é claro que a Cyborg está invicta há 13 anos, não por acaso, então é uma luta que tem muito, assim, pra gente entender realmente como vai ser esse teste para a Cyborg, como é que ela vai também se recuperar, até porque, né, Adriana, na luta contra a Holly Holm, foi a primeira vez que a gente viu ela fazer uma luta de 5 rounds.
Na verdade, foi até melhor no clinch, né? Porque me fez até pensar que de repente a Amanda poderia chegar uma vantagem clinchando com a Cyborg. Mas realmente esse homem tem uma parcialidade por elas assim, as pessoas talvez problemas do tempo. Qualquer homem que ficasse 13 anos no alto nível desse quadro seria considerado o melhor de todos os tempos. Eu acho que essa história talvez não seja nem só a melhor mulher de todos os tempos, é a melhor lutadora de MMA de todos os tempos. E essa luta contra a Amanda.
Sending in my gallery, it's all just sitting this way.
Why couldn't they do the entire fight in Vegas and then just had John Jones Gustafson in the floor? Make the tickets like there, the big fans.
Especially not by the airport.
Inglewood.
Vegas is gonna be airport now.
Yeah, so how'd you guys enjoy LA this week? Oh, like the 300 feet of road we saw between the airport and the hotel was phenomenal.
Today when we go to the one, we're actually going to see a little team.
Like the furthest.
Then maybe after we'll go somewhere else.
Did you guys enjoy LA? It was phenomenal. Really, just that stretch between. Yeah, dude, you gotta see that. And then after that, it's kind of just, not really worth it.
Maybe we could venture out and go to Sepulveda. We'll go to Sepulveda, maybe.
Stay on Gateway, bro. Stay on Gateway. Where all the cool kids are at.
There's that melody bar over there. It's always like the one when you're stuck here for a couple hours before the airport. I'll
Yeah, like go there.
walked over to us after seeing them, was like all over our hands. And we're like, I was like,
Or maybe she just never did.
Falar bastante. É muito.
I heard it was really bad, so I was like, well, I used to want to play this. I like it. It was very much like,
Yeah, right? Like, no. Like, oh, it's up to 30 minutes.
Who is gonna pay you?
Damn, did ESPN give up? Even ESPN gave up over there? They're like, fuck this, dude.
I made my debut on their stream, just nearly breaking the plane over there. I've been waiting for it, 2 days.
Meighan and Montel.
I may not even go. I mean, just grab you guys and then go for it.
Like, you guys taking Uber? Like, nah, we're taking Austin. All right, come pick us up, dog.
It all depends on what the game
Let's see if he can get his 600 words filed between now and then.
Literally, I'm doing 4 pages, and I filed 2 of them yesterday.
Oh, that's 4 pages. That's strong.
Again, Toronto has a nice little job.
That's strong.
I've been hugging this book with
Saying last night, like, this fight, because it happened in Toronto.
like close to my body, it's as like a heater.
Well, that was the tail end. They needed to take a couple years away from Toronto. They went back to the times.
Yeah, they were going there all the time for a while.
It was almost like a and for some reason, Toronto fans shit. Yeah, they shouldn't bring back Toronto.
Island.
Thailand, baby.
That would be funny, like everywhere he goes, he just names it like the next island. Like by the end of his career, like, what island is Omaha? The 24th island, baby! That's right. Yeah. Great. It's the 24th island, baby. Wow. Let's leave on stage.
Let's see, though.
It was so sad when there was no
Coffee?
Yeah.
Still out. It's one of the people you were talking about. You nearly got through this.
Yes. You were right. Because I predicted somebody would. Yeah. And I didn't want to say who. Yeah. I think. Yes. I don't think she is. It was something about how she yesterday. Something about she was Jack. Yeah. She was.
Gang, we're going to make Jeff Nowitzki available post-weigh-in here right in front. Okay. As soon as we're done.
Like, give us like 10 minutes after or whatever?
What's that?
No, I switched. I don't have my, just stick my computer.
Yeah.
Like a scrum thing? But if you give me time, I can run upstairs to get my stand. Or we don't have to. I was just saying. You can just stick my computer.
What do you think, man?
It's gonna. I imagine everybody's going to talk. But your call. If you could hold them for 10 to 15, I'm just going to be before I can run upstairs and get my stand.
Yeah, I mean, we're on property, so it wouldn't take it. It'd be better for everybody.
Let's do that then. Okay. That's better for everybody. Let's do it.
Yeah, it'd be better for everybody.
Okay.
They're gonna make Nowitzki available after. But he's gonna run upstairs. They're gonna hold him so we can run and go get the mic stand. Yeah.
So whatever, not like boom boom, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so they said like let him hang tight for a few minutes. So.
And they can take it. Let's see if they can take
Or do you want me to go get it?
Mark Raymundi for MMAfighting.com. It's Friday, December 28th, just after 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is the UFC 232 official weigh-ins at the Los Angeles Airport Marriott. And there are about 25 minutes remaining in this 3-hour weigh-in window. And 2 fighters left to weigh in. Meighan Anderson, who fights Zingano tomorrow night, and Montel Jackson, who fights in the very first fight on the card against Brian Kelleher. Everyone else, the headline fight, light heavyweight title fight, John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, Cyborg, Amanda Nunez in the co-main event for the UFC women's featherweight title. All of them have weighed in successfully. All of those fights are official. We are just waiting for those final 2, and they have 25 minutes left to hit the scale. Told that Meighan Anderson is very close, going to be here soon. Healthy, will make the weight. Not sure on Jackson.
Incognito.
With a beard, not recognizable.
No. Face is invisible.
You bring t-shirts?
Not to this. I was going to bring them to this ceremony.
Me
I should have brought it to this actually, considering it didn't go through my bag here. That way, I have to like do a security check for like a million things, because they'll definitely do that at Forum.
Well, I'll see you there.
Yeah, got it.
I'll get my support team.
I know, right?
Novas personalidades, novos potenciais.
That's on the scale. Then you have to put whatever.
Bom, tá faltando aqui, ó, 20 minutos para pesar oficial. Você chegou agora para fazer uma
Yeah, there's a new one soon. Oh, in Okada. I think they just forgot to put it out. But it's like right behind the left one.
Já está meio brava. Nós temos quase os atletas do meu peso, falta apenas o Montan Jackson, Chris Gordon mandando confirmar a disputa do UFC, pena de dizer assim como e Alexander Gustafsson, que se estrelam na luta principal, valendo o cinturão da categoria meio pesada. A gente vai ficando por aqui, porque a gente tem que correr atrás, daqui a pouco vai ter uma entrevista com o Projeto Gustafsson da usada, para fazer deputado, em vez de ficar melhor com a policy, caso, nós vou fazer daquele tradicional, sabe, desejo. Então, cada um vai ter que pensar um desejo de ano novo.
Kind of lightweight though, right?
Assim, não pode dizer, eu quero que acabe a pesagem matinal. Desejo de
Again, Mark Raymundi for MMAfighting.com. About 17 minutes before noon Pacific here at the Los Angeles Airport Marriott. And we're at the UFC 232 official weigh-ins. 2 fighters are remaining. They have about 17 minutes left to hit the scale.
You're a good man. No matter what aspect of it.
Those fighters are Meighan Anderson and Montel Jackson.
Is that to go to the bathroom?
If it's not there, pretty sure it's there.
set up the recording.
Heidi said it was like right outside the door, but it should be there now.
Like mind over matter.
I know. I kind of didn't grab any more evidence. 3 hours is a long time, so it's kind of,
3 hours plus Nowitzki scrim. That one I might dip. I might dip after I give it a recording. Like,
hit record for that one.
potty break. Potty break.
Grande evento do ano, ao vivo, só aqui no canal Combate de Galera. Para o nosso acompanhe no combate.com. Será que sai campeão tão do combate? Eu sou a lanterna, enfim, será que a Adriana será o campeão?
Tá na hora, né? Já foi segundo colocado, terceiro colocado, só falta um título pra ser campeão pode.
Em 2019 eu venho aí. Valeu, galera.
back here at the UFC 232 official weigh-ins. It looks like we have some movement. CSAC lead Inspector Mark Relea is up on stage. And here comes Meighan Anderson, who fights Kat Zingano on the FS1 prelims tomorrow night. Big 145-pound fight. With about 12 minutes remaining, Meighan Anderson, who certainly looks somewhat dehydrated, will hit the scale. She needs to make 146. And she does. 146 for Meighan Anderson. And her fight with Kat Zingano is now official. So we are just waiting now on one person, Montel Jackson. He has about 11 minutes left to come in and hit the scale for his bantamweight fight with Brian Kelleher on the Fight Pass prelims. Meighan Anderson has been very vocal this week about the state of the UFC's women's featherweight division, or the lack thereof. Very upset that fighters who are on the Ultimate Fighter 28, which was supposedly designed to fill out that women's 145-pound division, some of those fighters are moving down to 135. And it's sure seems to the naked eye that the only true 145-pound fighters in that division are Chris Cyborg, the champion, and Meighan Anderson. Meighan Anderson's opponent tomorrow night, Kat Zingano, is coming up from 135 pounds and is a longtime fighter in that women's bantamweight division. So it should be interesting to see what the future of that division holds going into 2019. And a lot will be decided by tomorrow night. Chris Cyborg only has one fight on her contract left after tomorrow's fight. And Meighan Anderson is really the only true other 145-pounder in that division. Because you can say that division is in a little bit of limbo. Nine minutes left now for Montel Jackson, and we are pushing it. It is getting close. Also, to reiterate, we're in the extra hour. Normally, the official weigh-ins are a 2-hour window. This one is a 3-hour window because of the unforeseen travel the fighters had to do this week from Las Vegas to LA after the event was uprooted by the UFC just 5 days ago because Jon Jones would not be sanctioned by the Nevada Athletic Commission due to an adverse finding in his drug test results. California Commission has done their investigation. USADA has done their investigation. And they've concluded that Jon Jones doesn't have anything new in his system. It's the same metabolite that he tested positive for in July 2017, the same one he was already punished for. And they're saying this fight will go on and Jon Jones is not facing any kind of suspension. The Nevada Commission wanted Jones to come in and still wants him to come in for a hearing next month. And of course, the fight is Saturday and the hearing is next month. That just wasn't going to jive time-wise, so the UFC made a fairly unprecedented decision and uprooted the entire event, leaving Las Vegas yesterday on 2 planes, 2 charter flights into LAX and to here in Los Angeles, where the fights will take place at the Forum in Inglewood tomorrow night. Ceremonial weigh-ins will be at the Forum at 4 p.m. local time in about 4 hours.
Oh, the one that was just up there. Untitled Chapter.
7 minutes remaining for Mr. Jackson. The clock is ticking.
Y'all will be able to hear. Take some notes. Even I don't want to get it. She can leave.
Ja, nej, västkanten. Inte i livesändningen.
I'm super flexible. Whatever works for you guys.
Precis. Det är det. Det finns inte så mycket att prata om. Ja, det har de. Vad sa du? Ja.
What are you doing? Are you going to stay on the stage?
They're coming to stay in Michigan as well, so they're talking about putting them up on the stage.
What, like a Q&A?
Just gonna do monologue, going back and forth.
To run a ball.
I was thinking that week, where's he? Just running along. Tracy's not here. So I always must have. We got pads. You won't stick the mics up there.
Does he have to be on the stage? Can he be on the ground?
That's where originally it was going to be. Was on
But
the
like
ground.
we could remain up here and he could be on the ground. But if he was on the ground but we stayed on the stage, because then at least.
Like, hey, is there any way we as the media could possibly find a way to shoot this media scrum? That would be great.
That's way too high of a demand, John.
So, even though we're shooting, it's going to be like a regular script. He's going to sit down.
Yeah, as long as he does it like just like
Well, the good news is he's taller than everybody anyway, so like
I can give you a long XLR table.
And
you could just run the stand up there, and I could just stay here. That way, I can keep it.
You think that's the best option?
Well, surely, can we not get?
I'm just
to a
worried
point
it'll be blocked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we do wireless or no?
Yeah.
Can we get to surely can they see over us if he's there?
That's what I'm worried about.
But you guys, we could all move down there and then.
So again, Mark Raymundi for MMAfighting.com at the UFC 232 official weigh-ins. There are 3 minutes left for Montel Jackson to weigh in for his bantamweight fight against Brian Kelleher tomorrow. It looks like Jackson might be here.
No one taller than Mark Raymundi.
And here he is, Montel Jackson, fighting Brian Kelleher in the opener of UFC 232 on Fight Pass tomorrow night. Looks like the towel is being taken out for Jackson, but now it's back behind the curtain. And here comes CSAC Executive Officer Andy Foster with the towel. CSAC inspectors will hold the towel up for Jackson to weigh in. He needs to hit 136 on the scale. And
137.
137. Mr. Jackson is 1 pound over at 11:59 a.m. And he misses weight. He'll be fined a percentage of his purse. Which part of will go to Brian Kelleher, his opponent. And that wraps up the UFC 232 official weigh-ins. No extra time given for Untitled Jackson.
Thank
It's
you,
over.
thank you.
Hey man, I don't.
So for we're gonna wrap this up here at the LA Marriott. We'll see you later at the ceremonial weigh-ins, 4 p.m. local time. Thanks for hanging out with us.